This is Legends and Libations.
Sipping through history.
Let the journey begin.
Welcome back to Legends and Libations.
It feels like a long 3 weeks.
It's only been 3 weeks?
It's only been 3 weeks, but my goodness, it feels like it's been the longest 3 weeks.
Well, yes, because I've spent the last 3 weeks in Imperial Russia in like the turn of the century, 1900s.
That does make me recall. Did you know, Matthew, that there lived a certain man long ago?
No, tell me about him.
Yeah, he was big and strong.
Really?
In his eyes, there was a flaming glow.
I've heard about this.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. This is Rasputin, my friend.
Rasputin. Oh, that was the song that you were quoting. Mm-hmm,
yeah,
song.
You guys know that, like that song that's like you kind of hear in the clubs. There's a Dance Revolution. Maybe it's Dance Revolution.
That's where it came from, dude. I did some research into this because it seems like every time I mentioned Rasputin to somebody that they would ask about the song first.
Yeah, well, I think American knowledge of Russia is almost nothing except for the Cold War. We're like, I think they're the bad guys.
Russia bad, Vladimir Putin bad, something like that.
I feel like we're not trained in Russian history even a little bit.
No,
in the Americas.
Russian history is fascinating too. But dude, I'm convinced that the song is some sort of like CIA mind virus thing to like make you think about the song instead of thinking about actual Rasputin, because everyone knows the song before they know anything about him at all.
I know Rasputin is a mysterious character,
and it's propaganda too, because it talks about how he was like the lover of the Russian queen when there's no substantiated evidence at all that there was anything going on between the Empress and Rasputin. So what do we drink? We're talking about Rasputin. So what are we drinking today?
Yeah, I couldn't go far from that. There's actually a brewery called North Coast Brewing Company.
Okay.
Apparently, it's been independent since 1988, according to their box.
Where is this North Coast?
I don't know what that means to be independent.
Not owned by Budweiser. I really don't know.
Anyways, it's in North California, and this particular beer is called the Old Rasputin Russian Imperial Stout.
Yeah, this one topic pretty much came with a ready-made drink for it.
Yeah, we didn't have to think hard. You would think, vodka, because Russia. But
right.
No, this one had a beer.
It turned out that Rasputin's favorite drink was something called Madeira, which is a wine that's made from an island off the coast of Portugal.
He's so bougie.
And I know. I think that's the only place that it's made. It's not like a variety, but it's sort of like champagne. It has to come from this particular region to be that. But we couldn't find any Madeira, so we're going to be drinking the North Coast.
Look how dark that beer
Russian
is.
Imperial Stout. This one's like 9%.
My goodness. 9%, yeah, 9%.
You know, when they hide it on the box, that either means that it's really strong or it's really weak. And in this case, you can just look at it and tell that it's going to be really strong.
Yeah, it's product of course it's made in the USA.
Does it say down there at the bottom?
Yeah, it's 9%.
Okay.
The alcohol volume is 9%, which is pretty strong. Typical beer you're looking at.
Oh, I nailed that. I didn't even look at it.
Yeah, you're looking at usually 5%.
Oh yeah.
Just to give you guys some background on this brewing company or on this particular beer.
Yeah, we've been told that we need to talk about the libations a little bit more. We get lost in the legend, so we're going to kind of up front tell you about the libation, and then we'll get into the legend.
Yeah. So here's the Old Rasputin Russian Imperial Stout. I love it. Right, their headline is "Never Say Die."
That's going to come back later.
Yeah, that will come back. Contrary to what the name suggests, Russian Imperial Stout was originally brewed in the 18th century England. The name evolved as the Russian Imperial Court developed an early appreciation for this big, intense brew and provided an eager export market. Have you tried it?
I like it.
Let me taste.
It tastes thick. You know what I mean?
Wow. Okay. So we're getting stout, very strong stout. It's not backing off. It is thick. Mm-hmm. Like the taste is full bodied.
It stays in your mouth. I like it.
It's delicious. Like, I wonder how many of these you drink before you're full.
That's probably why they only sell a minimum pack of 4. instead of like a 6-pack or a 12-pack.
Yeah. But you know, the 4-pack was only $10, so that's not so bad at your local
Local independent
Yeah. You don't find it everywhere.
liquor store. Yeah.
The independent liquor store should have it. So yeah, this takes us like, apparently they give money back to the environment, the brewing company, and all kinds of good, virtuous.
I looked on their website, and I think that they do make a Madeira type thing, or they had that in the name of some of their products. So they might be like full on in this Rasputin sort of thing that they've got going on.
Yeah, I could see that actually.
All right. Well, so far we like the beer, I'd say.
The beer is delicious. Like, but don't have it with dinner, have it before or after.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, because you don't want to get full.
Well, and it's like, the taste is so good on its own. Actually, like, it literally almost tastes like it has like whiskey or something in it.
All right, so we're going to talk about Rasputin, and guys, I wanted to tell you up front that there is absolutely no way that we are going to be able to cover every aspect of Rasputin's life. There is so much material on him, and as you'll see, that a lot of the mythos surrounding Rasputin was made up by the opposition during his lifetime.
Yeah, like it's not very clear. In fact, even on this box, just going back to it, legends that attribute his tenacity to his appetite for Russian Imperial Stout are unproven. Like, that's pretty much everything, even though it's making kind of like, that he likes Russian Imperial Stouts. Like,
he was a legend at the time he was alive.
Exactly.
The legend was being made about him by people who hated him while he was still alive. So, like, that's kind of an unprecedented situation, especially like during that time period.
There's few that have that same kind of like immediate press. Like, so I'm thinking of like Saint Francis, who,
right,
while he was alive, people were already like, this is a saint.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, Rasputin, it's a little opposite.
Well,
he's making enemies who are making great legends about him.
And you have the interesting aspect. I say unprecedented. He's not the first person to like become a legend in their time, but he was one of the first of the peasant class of like the poor people to actually affect change, who was not born into an aristocratic situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's like the champion of the peasants in some ways.
Yeah, in some ways.
All
right, so let's get into it. We will try to give you like a brief rundown chronologically of his life.
We'll do our best, guys. But of course, you guys do have to remember this is Legends and Libations, and it's not boring and brews. Yes. So even though we're drinking a delicious brew, it's a legendary one.
We're going to try to focus on the legends, and some of them we know might not be true when we say them, and we'll let you know which ones would probably be true and probably not. But we want to keep it interesting. It started off right off the bat, like Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin was born on January 21st, 1869, in a place called Pokrovsky in Siberia.
You got those Russian names down. I was like struggling over all of them. I just want to say Gregory Rasputin.
I've been reading it out loud to my son, and I've been doing it in a Russian accent. So I've pretty much been I've been thinking in a Russian accent for the last few weeks now.
Wow. Nice. You know, my first thinking of Rasputin comes from Anastasia, the cartoon.
The cartoon was great.
Cartoon was great, but
Christopher Lloyd plays Rasputin, and John Cusack plays the main guy.
It's a fantastic movie. Almost nothing to do with real Rasputin.
No, not at all. Like
not like the opposite.
He's acting from the dead in that one. He's like falling apart. His body's like a walking corpse. He's trapped in some kind of purgatory thing, and his little bat guy goes down there and revives him so he can come back out to try to finish off Anastasia, because that was his promise or something.
There is some rumor later though about this that comes from a weird cult. We'll get into it.
They took great liberties with the prophecy that we'll talk about later on.
So Russia at this time is not a good situation. Most of the Western European world had already gone through the Industrial Revolution. Yeah, exactly. And so but they were still living in serfdom until 1861.
Like the Middle Ages until 1861.
Yeah, which is crazy.
And that was right before Rasputin was born. And what I didn't know is that I thought Siberia, whenever like you would hear about Siberia in Russia, that it was like the far east coast of Russia was Siberia, and it was just like the place that it was really cold. But it turns out that it was kind of like Russia as we know, it was kind of like divided into two halves. And like once you crossed over a certain half, you were in Siberia then, and it spanned a much larger area than I thought.
Much larger. And it was just little towns. Like you would go hundreds and hundreds of miles, and like
in this place,
the only thing you would see is other little towns.
Yeah. And Pokrovsky was not super far on the East Coast. It was kind of like centralized as far as Siberia goes. It wasn't thousands of miles away from like the main hubbub of St. Petersburg and Moscow and those places in Europe that you think of.
But it was like over 1,000 miles.
Yeah, it was a long ways away for sure, especially for all the traveling on foot that Rasputin did earlier in his life.
I wonder how that went, making serfdom illegal all of a sudden when that was the literal way of life. Mm-hmm. How do they shift that?
You got me, dude.
This is one of those things I'm like, holy smokes.
My friend Josh wants to do a podcast on what happens like after big changes like that, like changes in like policy or the day after the Emancipation Proclamation or something like that, and like how the societies were built up.
How do societies function after something that
Josh, this would be a good one.
It?
What does society look like after they end serfdom?
I'm sure the same thing could be said when Constantine turned the official religion to Christianity from Roman paganism. It's like that's such a like all of a sudden move that changed society so drastically. And of course, Rasputin is like in the end of this kind of czarism of Russia.
He definitely drastically changed society, and
you didn't see it though.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So, he grows up in this little town.
He had some like interesting interactions when he was a boy. He's had like an affinity for horses, and he was kind of like a horse whisperer kind of guy, I guess, or a kind of child.
Right when you said that, I got the image of the Barbie movie where Ken discovers horses, and
I haven't seen the Barbie movie.
Oh my god,
is it good?
It's very funny.
I heard
very funny. Good. But there's a part where Ken discovers horses, and he just thinks this is what being manly is. He's like, oh, to be a man, you have to like ride horses or talk to horses.
I think that other kids didn't like Rasputin when he was a child because I think he was a bedwetter like later on, or like when he was like not supposed to be a bedwetter. So he was kind of smelling like piss and with the horses and stuff like that. So
he had a lot of weird tendencies, which I definitely before the time of like mental illness and whatnot, or even just like Tourette's, like things like he would violently shake his arms or his body, or
spinning around a lot, twitching, going like when he would do like the sign of the cross and bow, and it was sort of like a workout sort of thing.
Yeah. He reminds me of the whirling dervishes from the Sufi tradition, but that we'll get into that a little bit later.
Apparently there was an incident also when he was a child, and this is one of the last things I have about him as a child, is that I think he had like a fever or a sickness or something, and he was in bed, and there was someone in the town. They were having a meeting at Rasputin's house or wherever he was about a horse thief, and someone had stolen a horse, and they were trying to figure out which person had taken the horse out of this like group of guys. And in Rasputin's like little fever dream state, he wakes up and he points at the guy, and he's like, "This one was the one who stole the horse." And it turned out to be true because they followed the guy. The other adults followed the guy home, and he was trying to like fence the horse and like sell it or hide it or something like that. And it ended up that Rasputin knew which one of them was the horse thief.
You definitely have to say Rasputin had something. He had something happening. He had this tenacity to know things, to how to calm things down for people to follow him. And like, let's not even mention how many people like he was known to heal, right?
He had an intuitive sense of like human behavior and nature that you can't be taught.
Yeah. And, he was illiterate.
For most of his life. For most of his early life. I don't think that he went to school.
And yet by the time we reach like later on, he knew more than the highest like church members. And he's working with the royal house. Oh, that's just, exactly. I know. It's like insane. And then what I found really intriguing was even his Rasputin is a nickname. Did you know that?
It means like drunk or something like that, or debauchery
or muddy one. Like it doesn't, it's all just bad stuff. I'm not actually even, because I don't know Russian. I don't know which one it means, but I've gotten all of it. There's a lot of different things that it means, but none of it is good. It's all like the dirty one. but somehow he's called the Mad Monk. He does so much in his like really religious fervor. He reminds me a little bit of St. Francis, honestly, without the whole like peaceable animal like nature kind of feel. But he just seems like he has something going on, because he does have a very like, it seems like a genuine conversion.
So the moment that Rasputin credits as the moment that he got converted or that he felt a calling was when he was 18 years old. He claims that he saw an image of the Virgin Mary appear to him in the sky. Did you hear about this?
Yeah. And again, you're looking at these moments of like, he's replicating a lot of saint attitudes where, there's other saints who've claimed to see that. Like a legend that we could definitely consider in the future is Our Lady of Guadalupe. An incredible vision that happens there.
I'll have to learn more about that, but I think I know what you're talking about. I'm not sure if this vision happens before or after he makes this pilgrimage to...
Yeah, wasn't his pilgrimage after he was married and he had 3 kids pass away? That was in 1887.
Yes, he got married to Praskayova in 1887, and I think only 3 of their kids survived.
Yeah,
I think
I have 3 of the children died.
Okay,
so if it was 7, I guess 4 survived. And apparently, this motivated him to take the pilgrimage to the monastery. Oh my! I don't know if I can pronounce this. Vahakatori.
Yes, it's the Saint Nicholas Monastery.
In 1892.
Yes, it was over 300 miles away, and he took this pilgrimage on foot. And when he got there, he found out, well, he really liked this one guy who was an elder there. His name was like Makare or something like that. He
was like a hermit, right?
Yeah, he was an elder. He was what they call a starets. He was like a charismatic holy figure. And he learned a lot from this guy, and I'm not sure if he like picked up his like mannerisms or just. We'll find out later on that Rasputin like kind of picked and chose a lot of things from different aspects of religion, and culture that he liked, and combined them together into what we know as Rasputin now. But he didn't want to stay at the monastery for very long because he found out that they were all kind of like being gay with each other. And
is that so?
Yes, that
he found out. He found out like that monastery was not holding chastity.
It wasn't as holy as he anticipated it to be. And as we know, Rasputin is a legendary womanizer that he is. He was not all about that. So
yeah, and even at that time, he's like really fundamentally orthodox. Like if you think those strict people who are like, listening to rock music's going to send you to hell kind of people, and you're like, oh, okay, this is the kind of guy. He's and unlike, now if I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to church, there's like 50 of them down the street. He's in Siberia. There's no local church.
Yeah. I mean, he has one church in his hometown, but him and the priest didn't get along with each other for some reason. But one of the supposed stories about the reason that he started off on this pilgrimage to begin with is that he wanted to get out of like being a farmer, like doing hard labor sort of thing. And if his whole life is built on the con of avoiding work, then I would say he did a pretty successful job of that.
Really? So I had some reading that said he would because after this big conversion, he would start going and preaching. He'd travel and preach.
Yeah, he was like one of these wandering holy people called a straniki. And apparently this was a very common thing at this time in Russia, that at any given point there might have been 1 million of these straniki people just traveling from town to town, relying on the courtesy and the compassion of others to feed them and like give a place to stay.
Again, a very early Franciscan nature. Of course, that happened in the 13th century.
And that's such a foreign concept to us.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to house the wandering holy person for a few days, and I don't know, he's just going to hang out with us here before he's on his way.
People liked him. They would let him stay there. And and he wasn't just there. He apparently was healing farmers. He was giving people...
He was starting to gain his reputation as a starets himself and as having a healing power. And Rasputin had this like charisma about him that was kind of focused on his eyes.
Yeah, he would do laying on of hands, which I was very surprised, because I always think of like the charismatic renewal that happened in like the 90s or something like.
Yeah.
Or I guess it happened in like the 70s. A lot of things he does sounds like the kind of charismatic churches, but he's orthodox. He's laying on of hands. He's speaking in weird languages. He's
possibly hypnotizing people.
Yeah. It's also very much in that occult time when the occult was becoming quite popular. Well, had been popular.
So,
for
like,
some time.
yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, Jesse. And around this time, well, to give you some context about what's going on, to set the stage for Rasputin in St. Petersburg, is that the Tsar Nicholas II and his wife Alexandra are going to become major players in this story. And around this time, they had this guy who was a foreign hypnotist or mesmerizer or something like that. He was from France, and his name was Monsieur Philippe. Okay, so Monsieur Philippe was introduced to the Tsar and Tsarina, and he was introduced by Nicholas's cousins, who are these two sisters, and they're called like the Black Peril or the Black Crows.
What?
The Black Sisters. These are some of their nicknames, the Black Princesses. And they're called that because they're super into the occult. They're super into like Ouija boards and seances and floating table sort of situations.
And you're thinking of like imperial, like Orthodox Russia and all this.
Well,
like,
this was all the rage at that time.
yeah.
Like,
and it was also here, even in the Americas, a few years before that.
Well, you had these aristocratic people who had nothing to do with their time, and they got into these super spiritualist occult things, like trying to commune with the dead, because they had their schedules were just wide open. They're like, oh, well, let's just try to summon these dead people and
the
talk to them.
peasants have to work. But
Yes,
I
exactly.
Don't, so.
But I don't have to. So that would be like probably the last thing that I would choose to do. Like I would like do this podcast more if I had infinite time to do that. So this guy, Philippe, Monsieur Philippe, this was in 1901, and there was a campaign to expel him from the palace because they didn't want it to be seen as a French foreign person having so much influence over the royal family. Because
there was a lot of concern under who was influencing the royal family.
Exactly.
But you're also thinking of a time where the royal family does everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you could see that.
Because they have the divine right to rule. They're the autocratic supreme power of everything. But I read an interesting thing in the book about Rasputin, which, by the way, the book about Rasputin that I read was called Rasputin, Faith, Power, and the Twilight of the Romanovs by Douglas Smith. And I'll be honest, I probably skipped about the middle third of the book, but I should have skipped the first third because it was incredibly boring. But there was some good stuff in there.
Yeah, a very factual book.
It was extremely factual. It was not full of the legends that Legends and Libations is made of. But it did talk about the occult and the influence of Monsieur Philippe in the royal palace. So the thing was that Nicholas and Alexandra needed to have a boy to become heir to Russia.
Yeah.
And so far they had only had 4 girls. And there was this whole thing about, well, maybe Monsieur Philippe has this power to influence the pregnancy in a way that it could make sure that it's a boy. And there was a scandal about saying that Alexandra was pregnant and then she ended up not being pregnant. And there was a lot of backlash about it. And they finally, I think this was like the last straw, and they got rid of Monsieur Philippe and he had to go. But before he left, he said, he made a prediction. He said, another will come and take my place. And he will be like your next holy person that you should trust and put your faith in.
Wow.
And this set the stage for Alexandra to believe in Rasputin when he comes on the scene.
Yeah, but we still got a little bit happens before he gets on the scene.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened, because you have all these people saying some really heavy divine like things to a royal family that is actually on edge to not being a royal family.
Yeah, exactly.
The world is changing. Before I go too much into that, we need to talk about a few more spiritual aspects of Rasputin. Apparently he was very influenced by what I would say is like a little cult.
Oh yes, this cult called the Clisties.
The Clisties? Yeah. The Clisties are weird.
Very strange. They're like a break-off sect from Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah, but I mean, these guys are like straight off, like they reject, so one of the things is they reject the priesthood, holy books, and venerations of saints, excluding the Theotokos or Mary. The Virgin Mary is okay. They I don't know why this is so separate, but they believe they have their own communication with God. Their churches are in houses, and they're called arks, like Noah's Ark.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Not like the Ark of the Covenant, which we did some time ago.
See our first episode.
And they,
but these weren't the weirdest things about them.
No, not at all.
Because this was an illegal group. Actually, it was illegal to be part of the Clisties.
Because they're doing some weird things, and each of their little groups have like a little Christ, and a little mother.
Like the leader would be called the Christ, yes, and his partner would be called Mary. I think.
Exactly. Which again is kind of strange. And they had this rite called the rejoicing rite.
Is this the one I'm thinking about?
Try me. Let me see if it is.
Where they, I think they spun around in a circle with each other, and they like got until they got dizzy and they fell down, and then they had sex with each other.
Yep.
Is that the one you're talking
exactly
about?
it.
Okay, yeah.
Well, and one of the big things is like they were so built on, God will forgive you,
Mm-hmm.
like forgiveness, penance. But to gain that forgiveness, you have to be sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So what they would do is
Be the most sorry. Do
do the
most
worst
bad
things
to be the most sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. They would be like, well, we just had a little too much sexy time with a lot of people.
I'm really sorry.
I'm really sorry. And of course they don't know. But this place, which is interesting because they're also very like ascetic. Like they also like.
What does ascetic mean, Jesse? This is one I didn't look up in.
It's like when you think of those really strict medieval monks that would have like whipped themselves or done like extreme forms of
flagellation.
penance. Yeah.
Okay.
Walking on hot coals or rolling in thorns, sitting on a stone for like 8 hours. It's just like these really dramatic moves of mortification of the body.
Okay.
To turn your mind towards the spiritual, because everything sucks in your physical body.
I understand.
And so even fasting is a form of that, right?
Uh-huh.
And because Rasputin before was very strict. Apparently he would always fast on all the feast days. He would kneel and pray for hours upon hours.
But this is when Rasputin seems like he's pretty authentic with his belief system to a degree.
To a degree. And we don't know if he got involved with this group, but there's a lot of
later on, they try to frame him as being part of it. But I don't think that they actually find any ties between Rasputin and the Clisties.
Doesn't his sister write on it and say that he was close, like that he
knew some guys who were definitely confirmed to be in it. But
but we don't know if he ever was joined or not.
If you were just like looking on the outside and about the things that Rasputin got into and was supposedly doing at the time, it would be easy to make a case against him for being one of them. But I don't think that he was an official like card carrying member of the Clisties or anything.
But how did you become a card carrying member of a cult?
I really have no idea. But apparently this was the time when like offshoot religious sects of Russian Orthodoxy were rampant in Russia.
Which I had no idea this happened. I remember a long time ago, an Orthodox man that I talked to was like, oh, well, in the West, you guys have all of these kind of different forms of Protestantism and stuff. But that didn't happen here. And I was just like, have you read about Rasputin and everything that happened in Russia? Because I'm starting to feel like you guys have like a lot of weird stuff there.
That you just don't know about because the government controls the flow of information.
Again, it was super illegal to be this.
Yes.
There's a whole lot of very scandalous things that we could read about this. They do sound somewhat charismatic, like some of the charismatic revival kind of things, like speaking in weird tongues, screaming.
But really, this is probably just another case of Rasputin picking and choosing aspects of different things that he came in contact with to like add to his own reputation.
So the question is, did he
did he get the copyrights?
Did he get copyrights
from the Clisties to do that?
Yeah. But also, what did he take from it? Did he take the spiritual charismaticness, or did he take the sexy time?
Or was it a little bit
or
of
a little both? Yeah,
I think that we'll learn that Rasputin, I was probably going to say this at the end, but I'll go ahead and say it now, is that we find out that nothing encompasses the duality of man better than Rasputin does. Like at some points you would have people believing that he was the reincarnation of Jesus, and other times people were believing that he was the literal devil.
Literally the Antichrist. And I think that is something that people are not used to. I think people often want to say this person's completely good or this person's completely bad. But that's just not true.
He was completely both to the extreme.
Yeah. He did both
all the time.
And that is mind-boggling for people. But that is a real person. One of the other things the Clisties would say is their rejoicing rites were spiritual beer. And this beer is awesome.
We should. We've been liking the Russian Imperial Stout. I think we want to open up.
Yeah, I think we need to open another one, right? I don't know if I can call it. I feel like I can't call this a spiritual beer because,
I don't know what makes a beer a spiritual beer.
Yeah, but they would call it right spiritual beer because I don't think they drink. Part of their ascetic practices, right?
That's true.
And so, but this beer might make us start feeling spiritual. I'm not sure.
It might make me not be able to read my already poor handwriting. So at some points, Rasputin was also incorporating a lot of this self, what do you call it, where you deny things of yourself.
Asceticism,
Yes, that you were just talking about. And he one time went 6 months without changing his underwear at all.
Ew.
He also took in one of these entire pilgrimages where he walked for a really long time without touching his body. He just like did not touch himself in the slightest. He was dirty because like this is the time where he smelled like a goat and didn't bathe and stuff like that. So, well, that was one of his ways of denying himself, was to not touch himself, and that's how he kind of got the reputation as being disgusting Rasputin that we know of.
Yeah, like this is again that kind of like holy poverty that he's committing to. Pilgrimages are still people still go on them even now. Places like Jerusalem, Rome, Santiago in Spain. I actually did that one but a handful of years ago.
I remember you telling me
you
about
walk across and it's like everything's, but you take a shower every night.
Right.
I guess like maybe Rasputin was more holy.
We'll get into this later and you'll see that you're always questioning whether Rasputin is doing these things intentionally, or if he's kind of just like bumbling through situation to situation and just making the most out of each opportunity that comes his way.
Yeah, is he an opportunist, or does he
have a grand plan?
Yeah, right. Because if he has a grand plan, he's really powerful.
That's true.
But like,
if he's not, and he's just a dumb peasant from Pokrovsky, then he's Forrest Gumping his way to the top.
Yeah, he's done. Yeah, exactly. Dumb mucking all the way up to the top.
It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous story.
He appears in St. Petersburg in like a really dangerous time. Like he gets there in 1904, right?
Right, and this is around the time of.
But you're having the revolution of 1905.
This is when there were a lot of people asking for bread, right?
Yeah, they were asking for bread. They were
the people were starving.
The Romanov family,
right? And Nicholas II commanded the army to open fire on the protesters.
On the protesters.
Yes, it just like in the street, mowed them down.
Known as Bloody Sunday.
Yes, exactly.
And he's like, yep, this is the way I'm going to go ahead and get. Obviously, it put a lot of people started looking down on him from that point, the working class.
It probably wasn't even just that point, because you can see that Nicholas II wasn't cut out to be the czar ever. He is a product of having the birthright to become the czar, and he didn't actually want to be. He was kind of like thrust into this situation when his father died. And we'll see time and time again that Nicholas is not a good ruler. He doesn't have a strong will to make decisions. He's not confident in the decisions that he does make. He's very wishy-washy.
He needs other people to tell him what to do.
Right. He's disconnected from
the society.
Yeah,
and
society.
often the other nobles know they can use him, which is again
he's
why
highly suggestive.
Oh, and which is why they don't like Rasputin.
And above all, he defers to his wife, Alexandra,
who's
first and
German.
foremost, who's German and has no experience leading the country or making these kind of types of decisions at all. She's just there strictly to have a male heir. But in order to please Alexandra, Rasputin runs all the decisions through her, even the ones that we'll see later on end up being disastrous for the Romanovs.
And while this is happening, he mows down a whole bunch of them. And there's this kind of revolution started where people are like, the laborers, the farm workers, the soldiers, and all these different like groups of working class people come together and say, hey, you need to change things.
They're realizing that they have the strength in numbers.
Yeah. And
this is just a tradition that's holding the chains right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that they can break free of them if they all band together.
Yeah, well, then he sets up these like, I think they're called Dumas.
They have the Duma. So at some point they turn to a constitutional monarchy.
This is that moment, right?
For a long time. Yes, this is the moment that causes him to relent, and they actually have the Duma, which I guess is kind of like their House of Representatives or something.
Yeah.
And so they can make decisions. They have a prime minister.
Yeah.
But he gives up his supreme autocratic authority in favor of having this constitutional monarchy, which is like a monarchy with limits on it.
Doesn't he just use it a lot to get his way?
Yes, he still has the
puts
ability to do whatever.
There.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just doesn't really do the thing. But
it's a good step in the right direction, I would say, if he allowed competent people to be in positions and not like showed nepotism and favoritism and stuff like that. But
you know how it goes.
You know how it goes, exactly. And we'll see that later on with Rasputin as well. So Rasputin, on one of these pilgrimages, he goes to this place called Kazan. And there, I guess he makes friends with the Archbishop of the local Orthodox church. And this guy's so impressed with Rasputin that he gives him a letter of recommendation to take to St. Petersburg. And so under the guise of...
Isn't it crazy? Like, couldn't even read, grew up peasant in Siberia.
Mm-hmm.
And now this bishop is saying, let's take him
Yeah,
to
I love this
theological.
guy. Yeah,
this is essentially the Vatican of Russia, the Russian Orthodoxy,
well,
right?
people love to hear him talk. They would bring him to like heal their loved ones.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, exactly. He's healing them. He's giving them good apparently
advice.
Also, he gave good advice.
So he takes this letter to the St. Petersburg Theological Seminary, and he gives it to the guy there. I can't remember, the rectory or something like that. And this guy's not impressed with him because he's like, he's Rasputin. He smells bad. He has these herky jerky movements. He speaks in like strange clipped sentences where he kind of speaks like Trump does. You know how Trump can talk a lot without saying anything. He has a little bit of that going on as well. I don't know if that's part of his shtick or
is that part of who he like putting himself out there?
Mm-hmm. But it helps him to make friends and to impress people. And some people he just doesn't get along with off the bat at all.
They either love him or hate him.
They either love him or they hate him. So there was other guy in the room at the same time when he was meeting this guy, and his name was Theophan. And Theophan was very impressed with him. He will later go on to the palace with Rasputin when Rasputin goes for the first time, and Theophan becomes the personal confessor, or the one that the Tsar and the Tsarina give their confessions to. So Theophan will kind of use Rasputin at the same time to like improve his own rank as Rasputin was gaining ranks too.
Wow.
So you'll see this whole thing through Rasputin's life where it seems like people are using Rasputin to improve their own situation. But really, Rasputin is kind of using them
to improve his
situation. Yes, and it turns out that I'm a little muddy on the details of how this happened, but
that's what I think about Rasputin. For being, I think we can go with his name,
muddy?
the muddy one. These details are very muddy. It's hard to know and follow Rasputin's life.
So the same people that introduced Monsieur Philippe to Nicholas and Alexandra, the Black Sisters, they obviously got in touch with Rasputin when they heard what he was doing in town and all the charismatic preaching and possibly other situations that were going on with him that he was conducting. They're like, I've got to get a piece of this. And they meet Rasputin and they're like, okay, well, let me introduce you to the Tsar and the Tsarina.
Yeah, because he is a total mystic. It's attractive on like for people looking for occult things, and he might be involved with this weird offshoot.
Right, he's mysterious.
Orthodoxy.
They're obsessed with this at the time.
He smells bad, which means he's holy.
He's got these hypnotizing eyes. He seems like he can heal you.
Those pictures, though, his eyes are like...
His eyes are nuts. If you just look at the
the
bottle of them, it's like they're staring through your soul.
Those bottles are staring at me right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so he makes friends with the emperor and the empress. They hit it off right off the bat, and you'll see a bunch of this. It's like there's 10 Rasputins running around the country at one time
because he's going left and right. Mm-hmm. He's out in the country and then he's back.
He's making a pilgrimage here. He's seeing somebody there. He's having lunch and meetings with other people.
He's like both in like Parliament and way out
in his hometown in Siberia and Pokrovsky.
There is this thing, he's called the Mad Monk. Mm-hmm. And there is this kind of like strangeness to that. There's been some monks that in like Catholic legends bilocate. They're in two places at once.
That's cool. I like the word bilocate.
Yeah, bilocate. It's a weird one. It's I think St. Padre Pio is known to have bilocated in two different places. There's a couple other saints, and I wonder if Rasputin had that power.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe Rasputin could bilocate because it's so hard to follow where he's going. He's like left and right, left and right. Yes. Where is he? Is he next to Nicholas? Is he out by himself?
All the times that he was doing this and he was meeting with people and healing people and talking to people about spiritual matters, he was also staying up all night and going to the brothels and going to the bathhouses and having sex with sex workers and like doing all this other crazy stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like, when does this guy sleep? And also, he's drunk all the time as well.
Did he like the Imperial Stouts, apparently?
I don't know. He liked to drink it enough that they named the Imperial Stout after him. So while he's with the aristocracy, he's also gaining this reputation for the debaucherousness of his nature, and people are thinking that he's like a cult leader or he's like a member of the Callistes, or whatever. But Rasputin does really good to like solidify his place in St. Petersburg in 1907.
What does he do?
So it turns out that Alexandra and Nicholas actually did have a son, and his name was Alexei. But since Alexandra carries...
It's a very cool name.
It is a cool name.
Alexei.
I like it too. But what he didn't have that was cool was hemophilia.
Oh, I have a dear friend that has this. You just keep bleeding.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, that is like...
Especially imagine that in like around 1900 too.
Yeah, a little injury.
Mm-hmm. And being a kid too.
Yeah, it just can keep going and take... I mean...
So I think due to inbreeding and like not having a
it's
good
called
gene pool,
isn't that like the
royal disease?
The
or
royal
something like that?
disease because it keeps getting
Alexandra
passed by.
carried it, and luckily her daughters managed to avoid it. But of course, the one male heir, Alexei, gets hit with the hemophilia gene.
Sucks.
And
Sucks to suck.
So he can't like be a normal little kid and
go play
roughhousing and
soccer
stuff.
outside.
Exactly.
He's gonna, if he gets a little blood, it becomes a lot of blood. Those bruises don't go away.
But they keep this a secret. No one knows this at all. Even people in the palace that are there on a daily basis are not aware that Alexei has hemophilia at all, because they would see him as a weak leader and they would totally protest to him being the one to take the throne.
And everything needs to be to protect this line because Nicholas
it's the
has
end all
no
be
other
all.
sons.
Yeah, exactly. There are no other sons. So since Rasputin has this reputation as being a healer, he is called upon as just an experiment to see if he can make any improvement in his condition, because Alexei was not improving with all like the doctors at the time, and the people that were taking care of him couldn't make him better.
Anything?
They couldn't do anything to him.
Wow. Yeah.
So Rasputin comes in there and prays over him, lays hands on him.
Does some jibbly jobbly.
Yes, exactly.
And
the next day, he's fine.
He's fine.
Like, up
yeah.
and running around.
Right?
Yeah.
He like, and some people want to like say, oh, this was just him giving good advice or telling them not to take kid aspirin.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the big theories. I like that theory a lot, is that aspirin was like the wonder drug. It was the panacea at the time.
And it was thinning his blood.
It was thinning his blood and causing his bleeding to be prolonged. And Rasputin probably didn't know anything about this at all. So his presence there, keeping the doctors away, prevented the aspirin from being administered, and Alexei gets better.
Yeah.
And the Tsar and the Tsarina are
and they're just like, holy smokes, he's healed
this guy is
he's
the
healed
holy
my son.
man. He just like healed our son.
He's
we
dirty.
Have to keep him
he's
around.
A healer. Let's keep him here.
And he's like a mystic and an occultist. We're into that too. So
we're into everything he is.
We're going to let you come in through the back door and not be on the record of like our official attendance for the day, which happened all the time.
All the time.
And that's why it's hard to keep up with his movements. Yeah.
Straight whispering into their ears.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And you know, like at this time, we're also seeing that Russia's having a war with Japan.
Oh, yeah. The Russo-Japanese war.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And they're not doing good.
What happened in that war?
Well, it doesn't matter. They weren't winning. There's still an island that Russia claims as their own, but is actually part of Japan.
Oh, really?
It's all Japanese who live there, and it's ruled by Japanese. But if you see a Russian map, it's Russia. I think there's a few islands that are actually also the other way around, where they're Russian, but the Japanese claim it.
It's like Antarctica.
Yeah, it's like
Which we could do an episode on one day.
Yeah, exactly.
I do like Antarctica.
It's but there's that war, which they pretty much thought was Nicholas II's play. It was just his game. Mm-hmm. He was trying to get parts of Japan, and so that's a waste of money.
Trying to inspire like nationalism, and prove that I'm a good leader, that I can take as much land as my forefathers who made Siberia part of Russia.
Yeah, and he's losing against an island, right?
Right.
Well, what they thought, which would actually become a very powerful force, but at that time, and
ended up being an advantage to Japan later.
And then
on.
Also the Great War, World War I starts.
Oh, let me. We'll
before we need to go back.
World War I on pause, because that's not until 1914.
Okay, put it on pause.
But the same year that Rasputin heals Alexei for the first time, I actually got the best anecdote from the book that I read. And I knew a lot about Rasputin from my research before, since we had an extended break is when I got this big book and started reading it. But you remember how you said earlier about Rasputin being a common name, where he was from? And I think Rasputin knew this, and he was like embarrassed of his name. So in 1907, he petitioned Nicholas to give him an official name change. And you know what he wanted his name to be changed to?
What?
New Rasputin.
New Rasputin.
So he wanted to be called Rasputin Novi, just adding Novi to the end of his name to be new.
Did he do it?
Yes, Nicholas granted him the name change. And
Rasputin Novi.
yes, so back in his hometown in Pokrovsky, they had like the official civil guy who like does the official business of the government, got everybody out of their houses and like read the scroll, and it was like, now our fellow peasant will be known as New Rasputin.
New Rasputin.
And they're all just like, what?
Can you imagine me like, having like a past and then being like saying, hey, president, can you go ahead and write my hometown and let them know that I want a name Jesse?
Yeah.
I'm New Jesse. Everything you remember of me in the past, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I'm New Jesse now.
New Jesse.
That's so funny.
What a cool move. It's like, he's like, I'm not going to change it to the name of a saint or anything. I want to just be new.
No, that's what he wanted. He wanted to be called New Rasputin. It's just one of his like weird idiosyncrasies, I think. And he never even referred to himself hardly ever as New Rasputin after this. Like he was known as like Father Gregory or Brother Gregory.
Yeah, was he actually ordained at all?
No, I don't think so.
Because he gets even this kind of title, Mad Monk. The Mad Monk.
I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think so.
But he doesn't, like, I don't think he had any official holy orders.
No,
he was not a priest. He was just a holy guy, apparently.
Well, the royal family, the royal family, most of the time they called him Grishka, which meant friend, and they would refer to him as our friend or Grishka. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why he just had the kick of wanting to be called New Rasputin all of a sudden, and then kind of like
just forgot about it. He was like,
exactly.
I'm New Rasputin, and now I don't care.
Yeah, he is nuts. All right, so the reason that I say it seems like there are like 10 Rasputins is because this is a time in his life where he's popping up in different cities all over Russia, which is a huge country.
Tons of political cartoons about him.
Yes, the reason that he's hanging around the royal family is kept in secret because they don't know about the hemophilia.
Yeah, and so there's only suspicion here.
Right, and the suspicion is inherently bad. So they're thinking that he has put the Tsar and Tsarina under his spell, and that Rasputin is pulling the strings. There's one of those political cartoons of him as like the puppet master controlling them.
There he is, the puppet master. Reminds me of that Metallica song.
Yes, the master of puppets.
Exactly.
You have the prime minister and the people that were the elected officials or the appointed officials after the revolution of 1905. They are launching investigations into Rasputin, into the claims that he might be part of the Clisties or that he's abusing girls as part of his cult that he is.
Of course, every time anyone brings it up, what does Nicholas and Alexandria do? But
do not talk to me about Rasputin.
Yeah.
Don't ask questions about Rasputin. Don't publish his name in the newspaper.
I think the first time they did it, the first time they listened to it, and then they sent Rasputin away for like a few months.
Mm-hmm. This would happen several times.
Yeah. And, yes. But then, well, their son all of a sudden got his disease back, right?
Yes.
And so it was like
they wanted to keep him close.
Yeah, they need to keep him close. And they pretty much start turning a blind eye towards it.
Mm-hmm, towards all the gossip.
And even
about
exiling people for it.
Yeah, a lot of people, like Rasputin, it seemed like he was whispering in the ears of Nicholas and Alexandra, and that he would get people reassigned or fired from their positions who were looking too closely into him. And it kind of goes along with either you like him right off the bat or you don't like him off the bat. Like the people who thought he was a saint. Also, you have the equal and opposite to that.
Yeah, people
who
literally
wanted to kill him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Of course, there is the Romanov curse.
What is the Romanov curse
that he gives them? Right. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that the spiritualist that was with him before? What did he say?
Oh, that another one will come.
Well, here, Rasputin has a prophecy for.
Oh yes, his own prophecy.
As Tsar of the Russian land, he says. When you hear the bells ringing, informing you of the death of Gregory, then know, if assassins killed me, Russian peasants, my brothers, then you, the Russian Tsar, have no one to fear. Stay on your throne and reign. But if your relatives commit the murder, then none of your family, that is, children and relatives, will live longer than 2 years. Mm-hmm. The Russian people will kill them.
And that ends up being eerily accurate.
It's so strange. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like he says this to them. it's really confirming his space in the royal family.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
you have to protect me if you want to live.
yeah, if you want this royal household to live and keep going, it has to be that none of you guys can take me out.
Right, exactly.
Of course, he's kind of okay if the peasants kill him.
Because he was a man of the people.
Yeah.
Like,
we also have the Soviet Party rising at this time. The Bolsheviks, they're known as the rumors of rebellion, right?
yes, exactly. So there's a lot going on. Like, you've got to have a little bit of sympathy for Nicholas's situation because, first of all, he doesn't want to be the czar. Second of all, he's got problems abroad because there's tensions growing constantly between his cousins, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany and King George of England. I think that they're all cousins. And Wilhelm II has been looking for an excuse to get into a war since they were kids, pretty much since he became the leader of Germany.
Well, and Russians were losing their faith in the leadership of Russia.
Right.
They did not trust the Tsar as far as they could throw him, which was not very far because they could never get close to him, right?
Exactly.
So, but he repeatedly dissolved the
Duma.
Duma, because he was like, he just seriously just took control over it. He was like, oh, well, they disagree. I'm going to take control.
Right, exactly.
If you
put him
take
back
away,
to square one.
Take away the government of the people, and then you're just like, well, cool. He pulled us back.
I'm still the king and the monarch when it comes down to it at the end of the day.
Yeah, he just did not have the charisma. Definitely not the charisma that we're even seeing in Rasputin.
No, I mean, Rasputin turns out to be one of the most charismatic figures that I've ever read about.
But Nicholas is just lame. There's a lot of rumor that Rasputin's out at the brothels.
Mm-hmm.
He has all the licentious characteristics of hanging out with women. He apparently had a group called the Little Women.
Oh, really?
His Little Women, that they were cult-like, that followed him, that would engage in sexual activity, even though he claims to have not showered for 6 months.
Right. He's such a dichotomy of a person. And sometimes these investigations would lead back to his hometown in Pokrovsky, but where his acolytes, these female followers, would accompany him back to his hometown, and they would stay in his house with his wife being there. And she was all part of it and not opposed to it, apparently. And they would follow him and they would try to catch him in the act of doing something. And he would just slip away from them, or after a lot of questioning, he might admit to one aspect of it and then be like, "Oh, well, I repent. I'm very sorry for
which
this."
Which would fit
whatever.
with that kind of ecclesias or class. What is that?
The
called?
Clisti?
Yeah, Clistis.
He could spin it in a way,
and
to where it's part of what he's doing. And
it's part of who he is, and so
they couldn't get him for it. And when you have the czar in your corner, yes, then he can just call off the investigation, or whatever the investigation comes up with. He can just disregard it anyway.
It must be nice to have friends in high places, right?
Exactly. And there was this. So as we get a little further down the road, while the pressure is mounting for them to get rid of Rasputin, Alexei has another accident. I think that he was trying to jump onto, he had some kind of accident on the boat that they're on all the time, and he had a hematoma that appeared in his thigh, and it actually managed to stop bleeding. I think it might have been on its own, or it might have been with Rasputin's help, but it was only temporary, because when he was riding in a carriage a few months later, the carriage went over a big bump and it started bleeding in his leg. And this was the time where he was almost to the point of death. I think that they read him his last rites.
Wow, they did last rites.
Yeah, and they sent
they thought he was going to die.
They thought he was going to die, and Rasputin wasn't even there. He wasn't available to be around at the time, so they sent him a telegram to Rasputin, wherever he was. He might have been back in his hometown. And Rasputin responded, "Don't worry, the little one is not going to die. Just don't let the doctors bother him too much." And that ended up being exactly what he needed, and Alexei recovered the next day.
Wow.
And this was
how could you you would immediately,
you couldn't deny it then, because it's just he wasn't even there, and his power ended up working,
which is that weird it very much is Christ-like, right? When you're thinking of the Christ walking to places and then oh, don't worry about coming, they're not
right, when he raised the dead and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then you're just holy smokes.
Mm-hmm. It seems like he was onto something to where he might have had some sort of, dare I say, divine power to heal, but it becomes corrupted when he gets exposed to the high society of St. Petersburg. He loses his way into all the debauchery.
Mind you, there are those who suggest that very early on that he never had a conversion,
Mm-hmm.
but that he commended himself to some weird, strange god, some demon lord.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
More like a sold his soul to the devil sort of
Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Like a Robert
And he
Johnson
was
thing.
given the power to heal and allure people and hypnotize people into his power. And that is the other rumor, is like it pretty much has nothing to do with
I
his
could see
spirituality,
that
but that
too.
he uses his spirituality as a trick to this other god of sorts.
Right. It's a sleight of hand of the mind. sort
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah. That depends on how you feel, if he's as tricky as he is or not.
Well, he was a slippery fish from start to finish. Rasputin like also attracted a lot of other characters who wanted to get in on his game or like kind of run the same game that he was running. And one of these guys is named Iliador.
There's a picture of him. He's a
really?
priest. He's a priest.
He's a priest. Yes.
Yeah. And this priest does not like him after some time.
No, he doesn't.
Originally, they seemed close.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were friends for a while. Iliador ended up being one of the most dishonest people in the whole story that Rasputin ever made friends with. He would try to be his friend one time and then like try to backstab him behind his back. Like,
Can we talk about that first assassination attempt?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, first assassination attempt in 1914.
Iliador.
He sets him up where he is like, Rasputin sees a beggar woman, and she's asking for money, and he's like, of course, that Rasputin, I'm doing quotation, holiness.
Yes. Giving the alms to the
Yeah,
poor.
giving alms to the poor. So he's pulling, some coins, some coins out of his.
Yeah, Rasputin was not a stingy guy. He was going to give the alms to the poor whenever he had the chance.
Well, and this lady is just like, actually, this is a trick. I'm going to stab you.
Pulls out a dagger.
Oh yeah, she pulls out a dagger and stabs him right underneath the sternum.
Yes.
In which,
it pulls out some of his intestines when she takes the dagger out, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, it's nasty. And while Rasputin, this is like as he's fishing through his pockets, but instead of falling down and going into like shock from the pain, he goes to a nearby tree and grabs a stick and starts whipping her with it.
That's so funny. I did not know that.
He was like, "Oh, how dare you stab me?"
Did you see a picture of this woman?
Oh no, I didn't see a picture.
Okay, if you look up a picture of her, she has no nose. Like literally where her nose is supposed to be, there is like a cavern in her face. And it is very frightening to look at. And some of the things that I read said that she may have gotten syphilis because she was like a prostitute at one point, and the syphilis like ate away at her nose. And syphilis doesn't that also make people kind of like go crazy as well?
Me.
I think it does, but you could see like the rumor is that Iliador, since he was on the outs with Rasputin, had put this woman up to the task of assassinating him, and this was all backed by Iliador the whole time.
Yeah. Always assassination attempts by him all the time. And he was apparently
a mad monk himself.
Yeah, a mad monk, kind of devout,
right.
Orthodox priest of some
he was
sort.
he was like a Rasputin wannabe, but
he was jealous. It reminds me of that person who like
wants to copy you, but also
copy
like,
you, but like
is jealous of you at the same
time.
time.
They like want to be your friend, but also are jealous and want to follow along and create their own.
Because he had his own like a monastery. He kept getting moved from one monastery to the other because he would anger the czar or the church. He was just like kind of one of those disagreeable people, it seemed like, and they would try to move him somewhere to get rid of him for a while. But he apparently had followers. Like he had this charismatic figure himself. He was
he had some followers.
Yes.
Just not like Rasputin.
No,
you couldn't get that.
Yeah, most of his were like all in one place, and they would all hole up in his monastery together to try to protect him. It was a big ego thing with Iliador the whole time. And you find out like later on that he tries to like he goes to America and he like sells his story about Rasputin to try to make money. But at once he
because he becomes a janitor in New York.
Yeah, because he has to leave.
He gets
church.
defrocked. Yeah,
yes,
he gets like the church isn't taking him. But while he was in the church, he called Rasputin a false prophet and even the Antichrist.
Yes,
which is that kind of crazy space where you're like the dramatic other. Some people are saying this is a saint. Some people are saying this is an Antichrist.
And they go from one to the other. You find a lot of characters in Rasputin's life that loved him from the beginning to the end, but you have a handful of ones who flipped on him part of the way through his story. Like Theophan, the guy who was with him when he was introduced to the Tsar for the first time, he ended up flipping on him at one point. He said that that Theophan went on a pilgrimage to some monastery and got into some like monk cell thing, and he prayed really hard about Rasputin, and he prayed so hard that he passed out. And that when he woke up, he says that he heard from God that Rasputin was on the false path and that he shouldn't be trusted. And ever since then, he was trying to persuade the Tsar to get rid of Rasputin as well.
Of course, again, he probably just got pushed out of the court for that. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have this situation that is really advantageous to Rasputin, where he holds the ace of spades in his back pocket all the time.
Well, and he has the curse of the Romanovs, right? Like,
right. He's holding pocket aces. He's implanted in their mind the curse of the Romanovs, and he also has the only ability to heal their son. But it's a secret and no one can know about it.
Yeah. And again, we have Nicholas, who's like not really keeping, like he loses the Russo-Japanese War.
Right. And on the assassination attempt day that we just talked about, hours after that, Franz Ferdinand was shot in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, and World War I is being declared
World War I
the same day.
Holy smokes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is actually crazy, because it's like the same moment that Rasputin's life is in danger.
And he was in
Rasputin didn't after he did beat her with a stick, he
had to go to the hospital. He was in the hospital for 40 days.
And they thought he could die.
Yes. He was never really the same after this injury, that he kind of like lost a lot of his charisma. This was kind of like near the latter part of his life, but it was a miracle that he survived anyway, because you don't survive a stab wound to the abdomen in 1907 or 1914 and live to tell the tale.
This is like that kind of like incredible power where he doesn't die.
Yes, he just has an irresistible power to
and
cling
World
to
War
life.
I starts on the day that he's about to be dead.
Exactly.
It seems like he's about to die.
He's fighting for his life.
Yeah, he's fighting for his life, and now Europe is fighting. You know, World War I is never quite as distinguished as World War II. Like World War II
is awesome though.
Yeah, it's so much. It's super interesting. But World War II, we get a lot of highlight focus in our like high schools here,
right? Because everybody likes the sequel of things most of the time. But you gotta remember that the original is usually the best of a lot of movies and books.
But that one's called the Great War. That one's the really intense one. And they have the trench warfare.
Yeah.
Well, during this time, Nicholas decides, okay, I need to go.
This is in 1915.
Yeah.
Things aren't going their way on the war front with Germany, and Nicholas, for some reason, maybe at the encouragement of Rasputin, says, I'm going to take control of the military.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to call the
finally he
shots.
does something. Yeah, finally, it's like that moment where you're like, so a whole bunch of my students are reading the Odyssey. They're just finishing the Odyssey, and so many of them love Telemachus because he's finally like becomes a man at the end. This is like Nicholas II finally becoming a man and taking control, being like, I'm going to do something good, rather than just being a pansy and not doing anything. This is that moment though where he can, maybe become something.
To make a comparison to one of my favorite movies, in The Lord of the Rings, Rasputin is very much of a worm tongue sort of figure in the king and queen's ear. A lot of the time, and he is allowed to make decisions, or to at least influence decisions of hiring and firing people. I couldn't find any specific instances of him.
He makes the court though.
Right. Yes, exactly. He doesn't necessarily, I couldn't find instances of him making like tactical battle decisions to tell Nicholas, but he will definitely tell Alexandra like who he wants in which positions and heads of government.
And now Nicholas isn't even there.
Right, exactly. So she's running the whole country.
She's running
with
the country.
Rasputin.
And the country's going against Germany. She's German line. Rasputin's whispering to her what she should do. The aristocrats, these guys who have been spending their whole day looking at the occult and don't have much to do but protect their like own interest and don't much care about the working class. They're like, well, we don't like this. We don't like this guy whispering in there, but he's literally calling the shots.
Yes, it's pretty incredible. And this is after several assassination plots that they had against Rasputin. They tried to recruit some of these other guys to send Rasputin on a pilgrimage by train, and the plan was to throw him out of the train car. But since everybody was trying to advance their own position, and there was a lot of like you know how in America it's like the police departments don't talk to each other really well. The FBI doesn't talk to the CIA and a lot of like the division of information is that they would go and rat on each other to Rasputin to tell him when there was an attempt at his life coming up. So Rasputin got word of this attempt to throw him out of the train car and said, I'm not going on this trip. You guys can just go without me.
Yeah.
I'll be all right.
Actually, second thought, I'm not going.
Yeah, I don't think I want to get murdered today.
Murders, he's thinking of his stabbed Adam.
Yes, exactly.
Like, I don't want to do this again.
Yes.
So sick of almost death.
It's kind of started to reach a bit of a fever pitch as far as the anti-Rasputin sentiment goes in Russia at the time.
And let us not forget that all the working class is still being treated like absolute crap.
And all the newspapers and stuff, I don't know how, like what percentage of the country was literate, but they're running anti-Rasputin poetry and articles and political cartoons every day at this point.
And he's even going as far as choosing who's going to be church officials. Like he got
the prime minister fired at one point,
which is bizarre. You're thinking of this peasant who just comes up and is like, actually, you guys are gone.
Right. So you can see how he would make a lot of enemies. If you're not falling for his charismatic shtick, then you can hate him for a number of reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do we want to get to the end times of Rasputin?
I think we have to. I think the biggest thing about Rasputin is like what happens next.
Okay.
But Rasputin is not easily taken out. You don't simply kill Rasputin.
No, Rasputin has been dodging bullets and attempts on his life for many years now.
Yeah.
He had a mutual friend with this guy named Felix Yusupov.
This guy is weird.
Yes, this guy is really strange. He comes from a family. The Yusupovs were the wealthiest family in all of Russia. They were probably more wealthy than the Tsar's family.
And he does actually marry into the Tsar's family. We shouldn't forget that. Yes,
he ends up being a cousin by marriage to the Tsar.
Marriage to the niece of the Tsar. And so he is now part of the Romanov curse.
He's not happily married, though, because he grew up dressing in drag and trying to seduce men on the street and then running away from them. It was one of his favorite pastimes was to be a cross-dresser. Yeah.
Also, let's talk about that whole family. His father could not eat dinner in the same room ever.
With him?
He would just change rooms. It's like, imagine if you go to the dining room, the living room, the bathroom, but they're in huge houses. So he can never eat dinner in the same room.
Wow.
Even worse, even crazier. His aunt had a silkworm collection that every room in her house had silkworms.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird things. His grandfather arranged marriages of the peasants to only get the most attractive women.
Okay.
So, their family is really particular, and they're doing kind of strange things. Mind you, not even talk about Felix's connection with the occult.
Right, he was obsessed with the occult.
Huge obsession with the occult.
And not that there's anything wrong with him being a cross-dresser or being gay or anything or bisexual. It was the sole reason that he did it is because he wanted to be the one that was pursued and not do the pursuing, because he thought he was too good to do the pursuing in everyone. And in this time of Russia, the guys were always doing the pursuing. So he wanted to be the one that was pursued.
So he only did it for the excitement of
exactly.
pursuit?
Yes, he wanted to be chased. Yes. And he got super into the occult. I think he joined a society in Britain when he was studying abroad.
He could have joined Bumble.
Yeah, exactly.
They chase you, right?
Yes. So.
But what a weird family. Mm-hmm. I'm going to start with anything that Felix says I don't easily trust. He's an he's a narcissist.
No, but it's unfortunate is that Felix's account of what happens next is the only account that we have. And it's like the most historically accepted version of the events of the night. And there are some caveats and some discrepancies with the other people that were also there. But he ended up writing his account as a movie, as a book later on, when all the aristocracy in Russia lost their power in the revolt with the peasants overthrew them and kicked out all the rich people, is that they lost all their possessions and their wealth. So he had to find a way to make money later on and to sell his story about what he does to Rasputin was a way to make money.
Yeah, rather.
So he might have embellished it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, either way, let's talk about it. What happens? What happens on that frightful night?
So mind you, this is during World War I, where all the best fighters and military men are off on the front lines fighting Germany. So he gets some of second string people, to say the least, to devise this plot to kill Rasputin.
Yeah, he grabs a few other aristocrats, right?
Yes.
Other people are pissed about Rasputin.
Right. I mean, you could throw a rock and hit somebody that's pissed about Rasputin. So there were a lot of volunteers, I'm sure.
Isn't it crazy to think about how much he pissed people off?
Oh, yes. It's nuts.
Like,
and had the protection of the Tsar and Tsarina.
Yeah, I don't even think we have anything to compare that to the modern.
No,
day.
it's an extraordinarily singular situation that will probably never happen again. That's why he's such a fascinating character. So Rasputin, since he's curried all this favor with the bourgeoisie, that he has an apartment in St. Petersburg now, and his family can live there some of the time. I think that his family was actually there this night, and he told them that later on that Prince Yusupov has invited him to come to a party at his palace after midnight. If you think that that's a little bit suspicious, so did his family. They were like, why are you going to go to his house after midnight? Like, isn't it kind of late for that? Shouldn't you have your security detail? And like after the attempt on his life.
Let us also talk about it. There was some rumor that he himself loved Felix. Of course, that rumor was just absolute junk. If we think about the time at the monastery and him like being very heterosexual and very interested in his like cult of women. There's some rumor
unless he changed his mind.
Yeah, but there's some rumor that he's just interested in Felix's wife.
Right. So him and Felix had met before.
Yeah.
And they had known each other. He through their mutual friend. I can't remember what her name was, like Munya or something like that. But it was close enough of a relationship for Rasputin not to think it was super suspicious that Felix invited him to this party after midnight. And ever since the assassination attempt where he got stabbed in the stomach, he had kind of like toned down his promiscuous side a little bit. He just didn't have the energy that he once had to be going from dusk till dawn all the time and staying up all night and
no longer
all the bathhouses and things. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So Prince Yusupov sends some guys over to pick Rasputin up in a car, and they take him over to Prince Yusupov's palace.
I wonder how big that palace was.
Probably pretty big. And he said that the reason that it had to happen so late at night was so his parents wouldn't be there. He's like, so his parents would be asleep. And I'm like,
have you seen a picture of this guy, by the way? Felix?
Yeah.
He's
a
always
good looking
wearing,
guy. Yeah.
He's also wearing like that Professor Quirrell from Harry Potter
like a turban sort of thing.
I'm always like,
he's a bizarre figure. This whole story is full of bizarre figures, and he's one of the weirdest ones.
Yeah, he really is really eccentric.
Yes, most definitely. And I also read in the book that it says that since he was doing the study abroad thing in Britain at the time, that he had exams the next day. So he was like staying up late, procrastinating his exams to murder Rasputin.
Of course, that murder isn't so simple, is it?
No, the murder is not simple at all. But they did have a plan, a rough plan, and it was to poison Rasputin with cyanide.
Yeah.
So
do you know what cyanide is?
Something. Well, I know it smells like almonds.
Does it?
Yeah, but I don't know what it tastes like.
You know, you hear about cyanide, and I'm like, I have no idea what
it's a powder. And they got it from like a doctor, I think, or a chemist.
Okay.
And they laced these cakes with it.
Tea cakes, right?
And were supposedly Rasputin's favorite kind of tea cakes, and wine.
Yeah, wine and tea cakes, which is not tea. And he eats them, right?
Right. Well, at first, I think he was kind of like, I'm not sure if I want to eat any cakes this after midnight. I'm trying to watch my Rasputin figure.
Yeah.
But then
his new Rasputin figure. He has to make sure that his new figure stays sweet and solid.
So after he drinks some of the wine, of course he's like, oh yeah, I want to have some of my favorite cakes since you've got them. I don't mind if I do.
Wine and cake. That's why.
Exactly.
I would like a wine and cake after midnight. We're not even close yet.
And
Look at that Imperial Stout.
I know. We're about to open the fourth of the Imperial Stouts as we go along.
Yeah,
and get to the climax of our Rasputin tale.
that's a good place to be.
It
You
is.
you guys are just sitting there waiting. You're like, what happens next? Because he just ate cyanide, and you guys are just waiting for the
Yes.
answer. Well, we know.
Not only does he eat the cyanide, but he drinks the cyanide laced wine too.
like he's full of cyanide.
And it's not doing anything to him.
Cyanide proof. Like he can't hurt him.
He does say a couple of times that it feels it's hard to swallow, but otherwise it has no effect on Rasputin at all. And they think that there's a couple of theories about why this didn't bother Rasputin. And some people say that Rasputin, since he had been feeling for months, if not years, that the end was coming for him, and that he might have taken precautions, like in The Princess Bride, to like make himself immune to the poison ahead of time. But that's a stupid theory because, first of all, why would you know which poison that you would need to like make yourself immune to? And cyanide is not one of those poisons. I got this tip from my wife, so shout out to Casey, is that cyanide is not something that you can make yourself immune to ahead of time, because the way that it works is just not like
How
that.
unfortunate.
Yes, exactly.
So
The other theory is that since Rasputin was a clinical alcoholic, that his stomach acid pH balance or whatever was so far messed up, had this like condition that only affects alcoholics, to where the cyanide did not react with the stomach acid like it was supposed to, because that's how it poisons you, is reacts with the stomach acid. And
so it just
neutralized
it
it.
neutralized and slipped through his stomach, and it didn't. It just was
Right.
like little.
I mean, he does have this big hole from being stabbed
He's
with a
like has a
dagger.
little indigestion. He's like,
Yeah.
ooh, I think I had too many cakes.
Yeah, do you have a Tums I could take?
The new Rasputin needs Tums.
So Prince Yusupov is just like sitting there like, okay, is Rasputin going to die? This
Can you imagine sitting there across having tea cakes and wine with someone, expecting them to die, and they're just like sitting there, and you're like, how do you continue the conversation? You planned on this conversation ending. It's
a long
10
while
minutes
ago.
ago.
I think, why won't this guy die? And that Rasputin sees a guitar across the room, and it's like, oh, you'll play the guitar. Oh, play me a song. And Prince Yusupov's like, okay, I'll play you a song. And he starts playing the guitar for him.
And he plays that Rasputin song. He's just like
Full circle.
yeah. So he's just playing the Rasputin song, and he's just like, why is he not dead?
Why is he not dead? So he puts the guitar down, and he's like, I need to go to the bathroom. So he runs upstairs to where his co-conspirators are, and he's like, guys, the cyanide is not working. Rasputin's
He's not dying.
And they're like, all right, well, here, take this revolver and just go shoot him. And he's like, oh, brilliant idea.
Yeah, guns work.
Yes, we forgot about
My
guns.
parents aren't here. It's okay to shoot people.
Exactly. Mom and dad are asleep. Let's get out the guns. So he runs back downstairs, and Rasputin is like looking at this like glass figure of the cross or the crucifixion, because Yusupov had like decked out the whole room ahead of time to make it very distracting for Rasputin, or to like be things that he would be interested in, I guess, to give him the chance to shoot him in the back like he's about to try to do.
Distracting. He's literally looking at a crucifix at this moment.
Yes. And he does say something, I can't remember, like in Yusupov's account, that it's like, oh, well, you should say your last words to the cross.
Yeah.
And he puts 2 bullets in his abdomen.
That
in
poor
his chest.
stomach.
Yes.
Oh, in his chest.
Somewhere in the back of his chest. And he keels over on the ground, and it starts bleeding out on the rug. And they're like, yes, okay, finally, we've killed Rasputin. And I think he goes and gets the other guys, and they start to celebrate that they've just killed Rasputin, because in his mind, Yusupov is an interesting individual. He has built this whole scenario up to be, he is the savior of Russia, and he is killing who he thinks is the literal devil. So he's going to frame this cold-blooded murder plot.
He justifies it.
He's going to justify it to himself and to everybody else. He's going to whitewash it after the fact as he is being the savior. I'm going to dodge the draft, and I'm not going to be in the war. I'm not going to be on the front lines, but I can make up for all that if I kill the guy who's been pulling the strings for the last 5 years.
Yeah. I wonder what strings really made him go over edge there.
Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, it's never specific. You can never find what string it is.
On how muddy the waters are with Rasputin, it's hard to get a gauge on what it was actually like to like be in the room with him.
And nothing was written down because he always came in through the back door kind of thing, right? Like Rasputin's just whispering in the ear. So nothing he says is official.
And everything, all the accounts that people give of him a lot of the time are after his death. So they're not wanting to appear like they were on Rasputin's side.
Because all the ones while he's alive are very good. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he gets shot twice.
Okay, he gets shot twice. And the guys go back in there. Or Yusupov goes back in there and he kneels over his body to look at him. And Rasputin's eyes start to twitch, his left one first, and then his right one. And then they open and they stare at him. And then Rasputin lunges up and tries to grab Yusupov, who is screaming and running from the room. He's got like a high-pitched classic high school girl squeal.
This is not super unusual for Rasputin. If people made fun of him when he was younger, he would jump into the group of them, start beating them up and repelling them in the name of God.
And that's what he's trying to do.
That's what he's doing here.
But he just doesn't have it like he used to.
Yeah, he's been shot twice, poisoned, stabbed in the abdomen.
Exactly. And Yusupov says that he pursues him briefly, but I think after he's been shot twice that it seems like that to Yusupov because he's embellishing the story, but Rasputin is actually trying to escape at this point because he's not going to find any sort of medical attention at Prince Yusupov's palace. So he's running out into the cold.
A really bad Medicare there.
Yeah, exactly. He's running out into the cold saying, I'm going to tell the Empress on you. But he doesn't get very far because the other guys that are the co-conspirators come out and they finally put a bullet in his head. And that's like the last killing blow of Rasputin. But that's not where the story ends, though.
Yeah, that's not where the story ends.
No, they bring his body back inside. They bring his body back inside for some reason. And
Yusupov, well, you don't want to just keep dead bodies in the
right. Exactly. We have to discuss what we're going to do with it.
What are we going to do with this dead body? Put it in your trunk.
And so Yusupov goes to look at the body after the other guys have brought it back inside, and he faints when he sees the body. He just passes out, and so I guess he's trying to avoid body disposal detail. So the other guys put it in their car, and they drive him to a bridge, and they're supposed to like wrap him in chains or something to like make him to weigh his body down so he'll sink in the river, but they forget to put the chains on him because they're the second string murder co-conspirators.
Yeah.
And they throw him in the river.
In a hole in the ice.
Yeah, and he floats down the river.
Yeah.
And then they throw his shoe in after him, but they miss, and the shoe just like hits the surface of the ice and is just like sitting there as evidence on the ice. But the legend goes that when they found Rasputin, that it wasn't even the gunshot wounds that killed him, that it was actually like hypothermia and drowning.
Yeah, and has nothing to do with the actual gunshot.
Exactly, which would be
like
nuts.
that his breath was still shallow enough and he was still surviving.
But when the real story is that there was not water in his lungs, which proved that he did not drown because you're pretty much dead from a gunshot to the head anyway. So that debunks one of like the major stories about Rasputin being really hard to kill. He was really hard to kill if the poison was actually being administered. And some of the one account that I read in the book said that the doctor that they got the cyanide from
said that there was no poison.
Said that he had not given them real poison because it was like in his Hippocratic oath or whatever to like cause no harm sort of thing. And that he didn't feel clear of conscience to actually like enable Yusupov to murder Rasputin, so he didn't give him real cyanide. But who knows? This is not the only account that we have of Rasputin.
Yeah, because there's other accounts that say that he was even fighting up to the fact that he was thrown into the ice. Mm-hmm. Felix himself wrote, "This devil," he's talking about Rasputin, "this devil who was dying of poison, who had a bullet in his heart, must have been raised from the dead by the powers of evil. There was something appalling and monstrous in his diabolical refusal to die." Now, if we jump a little bit from here, there is a common occult thought at this moment where Rasputin is actually resurrected from the dead, from the waters, from his watery grave. And if there's a fake Rasputin that's left there, and this other Rasputin joins the Germans.
Oh, really?
joins the German. Well, you remember part of Felix, like one of Felix's big things that he saw, one of his big moments where he's like, "Oh, I need to kill Rasputin," is he saw him with a handful of Jews and Germans, which when you think of World War II doesn't make sense. But he was like, "Why is he with them?"
This is World War One.
This is World War One, exactly.
Yes.
So this is World War One. So he's thinking, "Oh, he's betraying us." But in all actuality, Rasputin may have actually been confirming some kind of like treaty between Russia and Germany. Like,
Rasputin was very anti-war.
He didn't want to die, and he didn't want the war to go.
He didn't want Russia to even be in the war. He recognized the problems at home between the rich and the poor, and wanted us to stay out of affairs that didn't have anything to do with us.
And so part of the whole rumor is like that Felix killed him because he wanted that war to go forward.
And that's part of like one of the conspiracies about him being a German plot to get Russia to exit the war.
Yeah,
because if Russia exits the war, then Germany can turn all of its attention on Great Britain.
And Russia lost
millions.
They lost so many people, more than any war in history. They've lost that,
Because they were like painfully unorganized. and unprepared.
But going back to the occult, there's groups that say that Rasputin was resurrected from the dead. He had clairvoyance. He had powers to raise the dead. He had healing, and he could travel through time. And there's a whole cult that says that he's the reason that the Nazi Party rose. That he was there and he led the Nazi Party,
like the incarnation of Satan sort of thing.
But that's kind of way out there, and that one doesn't really fit with anything like logical. That's just a strange, weird internet cult that you can trust as much as you can throw them, which is not much because you can't find them.
Right, exactly.
They have fake names on there.
The anonymity of the internet.
Yes, yeah. So, but there is this space where I think is interesting that Rasputin may have actually been trying to create peace for Russia, and Felix killed him in it.
I could see that.
That sucks.
And Felix, he's like his own megalomaniac, and he wants to go down in history as being famous, and he wants the attention. He's like Iliador in that sense, and also wants to portray himself as being in the best light as possible in the instance of killing Rasputin. So we can't really trust anything that Felix Yusupov says as being 100% fact. And you can see in other people that corroborated the story, or other witness testimony shows that none of this may not have happened like this at all. They might have just lured him to a room and shot him in the head, and that was it. And this whole dramatized thing about the poison and Rasputin getting up and stuff like and pursuing them was all just added after the fact for embellishment's sake.
Yeah, they may have just taken an extra step just to add story and drama to it, but there is a whole nother story here. And this is one I found really interesting.
What's that story?
So there's the rumor that actually Felix had nothing to do with killing him. He was allowed to claim it because it was useful, but that it was actually, in fact, a British spy.
Oh, okay.
This
is what happens in the movie The Kingsman. That was
really.
Yeah.
What movie is that?
We saw an advertisement for this movie called The Kingsman that had this like great scene of Rasputin, and it was playing the song, and I sent it to Jesse, and I was like, oh, this is a great movie. We got to watch this movie called The Kingsman. So Casey and I watched the movie, and Rasputin dies like a third of the way through the movie. But the way that he dies is that it is at the hands of a British plot to stop World War I, I guess, sort of thing. And
exactly,
they send this guy in, and he's got the cyanide cakes, and they get an audience with Rasputin, and he's got the eyes and the harem of women, and they get him on his own, and the cyanide cakes don't work, just like in Prince Yusupov's story, and it results in like a gunfight, or like a sword and gunfight sort of thing.
Yeah, so like it becomes this thing that's not even
an espionage international situation.
Yeah, like let's stop Russia. Of course, Rasputin's death brings about.
It makes it seem like Rasputin was part of a bigger plot that didn't include just him, that he was just a pawn of.
Yeah, exactly. Like he was just pawn of this bigger thing that's happening, and that becomes this like strange space where like, what do you do with Rasputin then? What do you do with the fact that he is being killed by international spies?
Mm-hmm.
But then also problematic is there's a Russian Orthodox Church actually in England that is arguing that Rasputin is not the guy like that he's put out to be. They say this is all Soviet like
propaganda
to make Rasputin look bad, but that actually in every way he was actually a very holy guy. Like you start thinking very St. Francis again. I know I've gone to that a few times, but it's like there's this idea that he was actually a very holy guy. All this like lascivious behavior is actually
was just made up the whole time.
Yeah, the whole time, and him actually doing what is bad is against Russia was actually wrong, and actually he was a strong supporter of the traditional ways. That he was a great Orthodox saint. Even
which could be the source of the miracles that you see around Rasputin.
Yeah, he's healing people. He's going around
his clairvoyance and being able to like predict the future.
Exactly, and he's taking care of people. He's like he's watching over them.
Right. He was very much a person for the people,
and he's trying to. And if those last moments, he's trying to create peace with Germany and said, "Hey, we don't need to be in this war."
And that's what did him in.
And that's what did him in. It becomes this martyrdom of sorts.
Right.
He becomes a saint that was martyred.
It's very hard to separate Rasputin, the person, from Rasputin, the legend.
Exactly.
When the legend is written by your enemies the whole time. Because most of the time you have the history is written by the victors sort of thing, so they can inflate their own story.
Yeah,
but in this instance, you have his history is written by the enemies, so you don't know what to believe about him while he was still alive.
But everything from when he was alive, like a lot of the people who knew him personally thought of him as a very holy man.
They did, and I found that such at odds with the legend of Rasputin and like the rumors that you hear about him,
or the Anastasia, the like cartoon where he's so evil, he's so dark, and yet in this kind of light, he becomes this kind of saintly character who's trying to stop the Great War. He's healing little farmers, giving them good advice, taking care of the son. Taking care of people who really shouldn't be running a country and helping them run a country. And in fact, his prophecy comes true, doesn't it?
Right, it does. Because
within 2 years, where are the Romanovs?
They are all murdered in a basement in the mountains somewhere under the guise of taking like a family photo.
Isn't that crazy?
They gunned them all down. Yeah.
They gunned them down during a family photo. Of course, you do have the Anastasia situation, right? Anastasia, did she get away?
No, apparently. Unfortunately, she did not get away. They had like DNA evidence to confirm that she was murdered along with the rest of her family.
Yeah, but originally there was a woman named, there's actually quite a few people, but there was a woman, Anna Anderson, who claimed to be Anastasia and that she escaped. And for a long time, people did wonder if this was true.
I didn't know this.
But yeah, she almost convinced them to give the Swiss bank of the Romanovs to her, which would have been pretty impressive.
Yes,
but then
I'm sure it would.
We found out she's dead. She's gone.
Do you have anything else on Rasputin that you want to talk about?
Well, I find Rasputin incredibly interesting in that space that he is like completely demonized by one side, and literally there's icons of Rasputin. Icons in the Eastern Church, the Orthodox Church, are called the windows of heaven. Like they're these weird, they're very strange Orthodox pictures. They have a very particular type. Do you know the kind of type of art that I'm talking about?
I think so.
They're always standing like this, and they're kind of very chewdy.
Most definitely.
Yeah. They're called windows of heaven, and you literally have windows of heaven
of Rasputin.
While other people are saying this is a dark wizard. The demonic wiki is saying, hey, this guy worshiped demons. He called on this demon to create a new world, and this is our like patron demon worshiper who uses demon worship to get power. And then you have the other side where the Russian Orthodox Church is just saying like, here's a saint. What a complicated character.
Probably one of the most enigmatic and complex figures that you'll ever come across in history. And I don't think that we'll actually know the answer to a lot of these questions without being there.
Yeah, I wish we could
travel
here and
back to that situation, because if
we don't talk about my time traveling machine, but it doesn't work really well when it comes to Great War. For some reason, there's a lot of frequency,
a lot of interference.
Yeah, a lot of interference. I can't get there so easily.
If Rasputin was conning everybody, and if he was a demonic influenced like Antichrist
Say
figure.
a demonic influencer.
Yes, if he was a demonic influencer, then how was he able to fool so many high-ranking members of the church wherever he went?
Yeah, where they thought this is a holy guy. And then it seems like the people who really don't like him are people who have a lot to lose, like money.
Right, exactly.
Lots of money to lose, a lot of the aristocrats.
And if it was like a deal with the devil, sort of satanic bargain, why would one of his powers be the ability to like heal people?
He give
or
people
whatever?
good advice.
Right,
Like, you're
exactly.
like, come on. And so there's this really weird space with Rasputin as I'm like, by the end of like researching him, I don't know, is he
I'm not
is
sure
he
if
a
I like him or
demonic,
not.
yeah, is he a demonic wizard or is he kind of a cool guy that's really complex? Is he a saint? Is he and so I
know I mentioned Trump earlier, and a lot of the people who like Trump will tell you that they like him because he like tells it as it is, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Like he's
yeah,
like
yeah.
straightforward with you. And I read that a lot of the reason that people resonated with Rasputin a lot is because due to his like peasant upbringing,
Yeah,
and
he
not
was-
being part of the holy like church establishment or whatever at the time, that he would just with his limited literacy and understanding of things, that he was able to just relate it to people in a way that they could understand it better. And it, even though it was simple and not novel or revolution, like particularly unique, it resonated with people in a way that they understood, and that like spread his whole influence and made him into the figure that was popular amongst the Russian people.
Yeah, exactly. He knew the common tongue, and that's more than just knowing the language. It's knowing how those
to talk
people,
to people,
yeah,
yeah.
how they live. Like if you go around using these great doctoral, theological, or
Citing these
scientific
studies,
names, yeah.
like showing you the facts and the figures.
Can
and
you
stuff
imagine
like
how that would be here in like the Southeast? You'd be made fun of.
Right, exactly.
But like to bring it to the common people, you really have to speak with the language.
You had to walk in both worlds,
and
like he did a lot of the time.
And you know, his last prophecy did come true. The Bolshevik Revolution did happen. That's the Soviet Union took over.
Right.
A dictatorship took over after that. And
all the Romanovs died within 2 years.
died within 2 years. All of them. Anastasia didn't make it. I'm sorry, guys. We
Unfortunately.
really wanted that. We wanted Anastasia to make it, but she didn't. And so what we're looking at here is like his last words were true. This kind of like really secular superpower took over afterwards, and you know
He seemed to lose it a little bit near the end.
Yeah.
After he got stabbed, I was reading that he wasn't spending as much time in church as he had been before. And you would think that if he was as in tune to his surroundings and people's intentions, that he might have been able to pick up on the assassination attempt before it happened.
Yeah.
But either he was ready to go, and that he knew that he might go, because there was this time, the last time that he met with the Tsar Nicholas and his wife Alexandra, they usually asked Rasputin to bless them before they departed. And Rasputin said, no, this time you bless me.
Oh, interesting.
And he asked Nicholas to bless him. And that was their departing words, was when Nicholas blessed him, and then they never saw each other again.
Oh, that's very. Could you imagine if they made a new Anastasia, where it's not called Anastasia, it's called Rasputin. It just follows his
There
line.
needs to be a good Rasputin movie in modern times that does not have anything to do with the Kingsmen and does not have anything to do with Disney animation.
Yeah, and doesn't need to dramatize this kind
No,
of
I even watched the one with
evil
Alan
wizard.
Rickman from 1996, and I thought that it was going to be really good, but ended up kind of being kind of campy and glossing over the more interesting parts of Rasputin that I wanted to see.
the darn. There's some
Yes.
interesting parts with this.
I know. So there's definitely money to be made in a good Rasputin movie if you can encompass.
Think of it, producers. Think of
Yeah,
it.
if you can walk the line between him being holy and debaucherous at the same time.
That would be the best part, to do both. Mm-hmm. I like that Rasputin the most. The one who is like confusing. The one that we can't hold and say he was religiously a saint or that he was a demonic wizard.
Mm-hmm.
I like the one that I'm like, he's a demonic holy man.
Right.
He's a godly
Can't pin
demon.
him down.
Yeah,
Exactly.
can't pin him down.
Yeah, no.
Well, guys, thank you for listening to Legends and Libations.
What would you rate The Legend of Rasputin as, Jesse?
Ooh, so if I'm rating the
I think
legend,
that we forgot to rate Atlantis.
Oh no, did we?
I don't remember if we did or not, but
We were so schwasty by the end of it.
Atlantis a 10 though. Atlantis is one of my
Atlantis is
favorite ones. I'm going to give it a 10.
Yeah, and Atlantis has, because it was too big for me, I almost want to give it an 8. It was too big for me.
It was too big.
But Rasputin.
So we can take the average and give Atlantis a 9.
A 9. We can give it a 9.
All right. So what do you give? That was for some context before we do Rasputin.
Yeah, Rasputin. I want to give Rasputin a solid 8 also because he is very human, but I find his timeline extremely confusing.
I was going to agree with you. I was going to give Rasputin an 8 as well.
Yeah, just like he doesn't.
No, the thing that I hate about Rasputin that I came to despise while researching him was the fact that the legends were written by the people that did not like him.
I also had a hard time finding legends. Everyone's like, let me tell you the facts about Rasputin. I'm like, damn it, I want to know the legends.
Right, exactly.
Tell me the weird stuff.
Yes, I want to know the craziest stuff. I like the stories of him not bathing or touching himself for 6 months, of him smelling like a goat.
Yeah.
Of him always having the crust of the beard or like the food in his beard all the time.
Cult of ladies.
Yes.
But also healing people. I mean, like he was strange. And so I want to give him I think for research purposes, I'm going to give it a 7, but for interest that he was a weird 9.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to go average 8 for me.
Yeah, exactly. The reality ends up being like a 7, but the mythos ends up being like more of a 9 or a 10 situation.
Yeah. But the Rasputin Imperial Stout is an absolute 10, guys. It's a banger.
Yes. I would say that's one of my favorite beers.
Yeah, I think that we found a beer that like, oh my God, it's so good. If you guys are like, hey, I like a stout beer, get the Rasputin Imperial Stout. It is so good. If you can find complex. It available in your area. You're gonna have to go to that. You're gonna have to go to that place. You sent me on a journey today. You were like, here's the address to this place wherever this beer is. I think I went to the most strange parts of our own city. Like I had to go to the corners. I was like, what area is this that I'm in? I passed so many stores that I've never seen, so many villages I've never seen.
They had a thing on their website that was like, find us near you. And that's what I did. So I just sent you the address of it.
Well, I'm glad you gave me the address because I've seen it before, but I've never grabbed it and I couldn't find it while it was down.
Yeah, it's never there when you need it.
Never.
Right. You got to search for it, much like Rasputin, the person.
Well, again, thank you for listening. And
I think next time we might have a guest on our show. My good friend Logan hosts his own podcast called The Quick Update with Logan Rigsby. And I encourage you to check it out because it's a great way to get the news that's like not politicized and it's in like small 15-minute doses twice a week.
Not like us. We're not even close to 15 minutes.
No, exactly. We're way over time.
We're like, how long can we do? We originally tried to do this in an hour.
Right. So next time we're probably going to try to have Logan on the show and we're going to teach him something about legends and libations.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but
be prepared.
He's going to go into it blind, much like the audience, you guys. So look forward to that. And until then.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, Legends and Libations.
Yes, exactly.
And may you keep sipping through history.